Welcome back to the Pathfinders Podcast. I'm your host, Pete Schramm, and we're going to talk about a couple of things today, like we usually do, but with a special Italian flair today. We're bringing a local legend onto the show, and he's going to talk about his career journey, right? Looking at those different angles, dimensions of the career map, right? We talk about it in 5 different capacities, from the position to the skill to the achievements, the education and certs, and some of the fun stuff along the way, past, present, future. And of course, once we have a little bit of a plan, bit of a map, we got to make sure we bounce those ideas off of somebody. So who are those individuals that guided Vince on his journey, on his adventure, that personal board of advisors, and how it progressed over time? This will be posted on the different podcast platforms, posted up on LinkedIn. So please give a follow to our friend Vince and comment as you are diving into this one. So you know how we start this, right? Which is the favorite quote. And for Vince, right, today he said 2. It's right, the favorite one that I have or favorite one for others, right? Never underestimate the power of minty fresh breath. Love it. Number 2, or people suck, but God says we have to love them anyways. And that's my best impression of the Vince voice. He'll do a much better job whenever he pops on here. But who is this guy, right? For over 40 years, Vince Consoli's been leading, coaching, developing, and encouraging people while serving in a variety of HR and operations executives leadership roles. In addition, he held an HR ops management positions in manufacturing, service industries, nonprofits. Currently, he's the COO for ProMark Company, which is over 55 years old. It's a Career Partners International firm. They do great work. They specialize in helping companies help their people in all stages of the talent lifecycle. Give them a shout out if you're thinking about outplacement for your organization. Vince also, I don't know how he does all this stuff, serves on the board of directors for Pittsburgh Human Resources Association, PHRA. You'll see that in his marketing material that he has in front of him throughout the show today. And he's also the license holder and organizer for Disrupt HR Pittsburgh. Mark your calendars, typically one in the spring, one in the fall. Get ready for it. And fun fact, as we always do, Vince loves to cook. Welcome onto the show, Vince. How we doing?
Good, Pete. It's a good day.
Great day indeed. A little chilly outside, but hey, we roll with the punches. Vince, the first thing that I want to ask you is, growing up, what did you want to be?
Well, that was a long time ago, Pete. So, the first thing I probably thought about was I wanted to be a teacher. And I have to tell you, that didn't last long. I loved being able to educate folks and help them along even early on. But then I realized I preferred application to academics and gave that dream up pretty quick. So.
Mm-hmm. And so what was it that fed into that kind of decision-making process, right? What did you study being a teacher in college? Did you take a different route? What led you to that? Because a lot of the listeners are like, all right, maybe I want to do this, but what is that like on the other side? And so if you share a little bit of what helped influence your decision, it might be helpful for some other people or their kids.
Yeah, well, there's always factors that influence a decision, and they're never things you think about. Mm-hmm. So your childhood dreams are just that, the things that you think would be cool. I had a great teacher growing up, several of them. And I said, well, this would be great. How they influenced my life. I thought this would be a good thing to do. And then I started to realize some other things, kind of like, they don't really get to do what they want to do necessarily. They have to do what somebody else tells them to do, which I didn't like. I'm more of an entrepreneurial spirit. And then other things come to play, like money. At the time, they weren't making a whole lot of money. I could make a lot more money somewhere else. And so as I was going through high school and college, and then, I knew that wasn't going to be where I ended up. Although training and development of others has been a big part of my career for 42 years.
Yeah.
So it's still there. The desire is still there. It's just the path in which I execute that desire. It was different than what I thought it would be.
And I think you do a lot of teaching in the work that you do at ProMark, that throughout PHRA. I know whenever I'm going through training for Disrupt HR, right, you take each of the speakers under your wing and say, hey, let's take what you have, take what you're working on, and let's make it better. So truly walking the walk, talking the talk. So then thinking about the things, you finish up high school, what was the next step of the journey for you? What made the most sense?
Well, you talk about folks who influence you. I had an interesting life. I started out at 9 years old. My mother died. So, back in those days, there weren't a lot of divorce and a lot of single parent families, but we were one. Father dedicated the rest of his life, which was only 10 more years, to taking care of his kids and things like that. So when I was graduating high school, I always had good grades. I liked school. I liked the people part of school. And that wasn't the issue, but I just could not see myself in college.
Yeah.
So decided I wasn't going to go. Well, I had a biology teacher, which absolutely had nothing to do with my career. But she was just a good friend, a biology teacher who went, freaking crazy to think that I wouldn't even think about going to college. And, she beat the crap out of me mentally until I figured out, okay, maybe I should go to college.
Yeah.
I got college probably 6 months later than I should have, but I still got in because, like I said, I had pretty good grades. And I was on my way to college, even though, and it was kind of funny, you look at life in my generation anyway, many of the parents of my generation didn't go to college. My father was a graduate of Colgate University. He was an Ivy League school guy. So but he never pushed. He always wanted to make sure we did what we wanted. But it was one of my teachers who said, you need to go to college. And I never regretted listening to her and paying attention. But I wasn't sure what I was going to do in those days. So I went in, decided I was going to do business because that was as general as it could be.
Yeah, right.
Back in those days, turned out it was great. I ended up using my education for a change.
Well, that's one of the things that we ask about is, you go through those, 3, 4, 5, 7 years for some people, while you're
just 4 for me. Actually, it was 3.5. Yeah, 3.5, but I kept the other half a year just to kind of enjoy myself. So
there we go. But we ask, you put a lot of tools into your toolbox, but which of the tools stayed in your toolbox? So things you learned in the classroom, out of the classroom, about yourself, and maybe figured out, hey, these are some of the things that I like and some of the things I don't like in that process.
Yeah, well, academics was not a big thing for me. When we're talking theory, and that just wasn't. My question in every class was, so what can I do with that?
Right.
Or how do you apply that to your life? And that's been my thought process from then on. Actually, it started in high school, but I always wanted to know the application part of it. The theory is important. I don't discount that for all the academicians out there. I'm not saying it's bad, but for me, education, academics in any way, shape is of no value unless I can use it to help somebody.
Yep. And helping people and moving the ball forward. Right. Okay. So we finish up there, and then where'd you decide to take your talents? I'm guessing you didn't go into a full-time teaching role formally as the first step just yet. Who knows?
I did not. So when I was in when I was in college, in the summers, I worked at U.S. Steel.
Yeah.
At the Irvin plant. That was a long time. I'm not even sure they still exist anymore, but I worked there. And so that was, pretty much on my, it was all that was on my resume. Back in those days, we didn't try to manufacture a resume. It was, I had school. I worked at U.S. Steel. So I took a position at LTV Steel in their management training program.
Yeah.
So I went in, so it was operations management. Turns out they hired 80 people in the summer that I got hired there. And by the next summer, 79 of those 80 people were gone. I was the only one they kept. And I had moved I was a year-long training program, and it lasted for me 3 months. And I got a position 3 months after that. And a year and a half after that, I became a general supervisor.
Whoa. Okay.
Talk about education. So I'm in charge of 15 supervisors and 150 United Steelworkers of America. And most every one of the people that reported to me had children older than me.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, if it was somebody else, I'd be a little worried. But knowing what I know about you, Vince, I don't think it'd be an issue. And what a remarkable opportunity, right? You're in your early to mid 20s at this point in time.
Yeah.
And did you think that you wanted to get into leadership?
Yeah, it just was,
okay.
Even in high school and college, anytime a group was formed and something was supposed to happen, I kind of naturally became the spokesperson or the head of the group. That just kind of, I didn't, I don't necessarily believe that all leaders, you're born that way. I believe you can educate it, but if you are born that way, then your job is to polish that up a little bit so you can, be better at what it is. That was just a natural thing for me. I didn't even think about it. It just, when there was something happened and who wants to do this, step up and go, step up and go. That's how I did that my whole career. Even if I didn't know what I was doing, I kind of kept going.
So we'll talk a little bit about some of the people that guided you along the way and supported you, right? That personal board of advisors. But first, I want to talk a little bit more about, all right, so internship in the steel industry, first role is in there, union environment. Okay. Yep. At what point did you start piecing together a little bit of a plan saying, all right, I want to get to this point, 30, 40 years from now, and how do I work my way backwards from that? Sometimes people say, I never put together a plan. Or were you doing more of a bottoms up saying, okay, I'm here, and then I'd like to try and do this, and then I'd like to try and do this. And it's not necessarily just the job position, the job title, but maybe it was experiences, responsibility, things that you wanted to achieve. Did you ever put some kind of a map like that together, Vince?
I'm sorry. No, I didn't.
Yeah, hey, most people say no.
Yeah, no. In my day, it was keep your head down and keep going. And I just took every opportunity that came to me. How I got into the HR roles and people roles. LTV Steel used to be J&L Steel. It was bought by LTV. They moved the headquarters while I was there. They moved the headquarters from Pittsburgh to Cleveland. Okay, and then they closed down most of the plant except for the coke plant, the metallurgical coke plant where I worked. And so they took away all of the training people, all the development people, all the HR people, all gone, went to Cleveland. Yep. So a couple of years before I left the organization, they needed to hire and train some people. Mm-hmm. So they brought the 5 general supervisors together. There was only 5 of us, and we kind of ran the plant except, on a shift basis, 24/7. Yeah. And they said, we need help for somebody to hire some people and get them trained. And then all the other 4 of them looked at me and said, let the college boy do it. Cause I was the only one with a college education. Yeah. And like I said, my philosophy back in them days was, happy to help. Mm-hmm. Turns out I was really good at it. And that changed the whole career. So, when I finally left LTV Steel, my first role after that was a director of human resources role, because I understood hiring and training and how to lead people. So that's, and that was, again, you talk a lot about personal board of advisors. Yeah. There were lots of folks there. And let me tell you, I'm going to get this out before, I don't know if this is going to mess up all your whole philosophies or not, but some of my board of advisors, some of the people that helped me along the way were people that were horrible. And they taught me what not to do. And I learned an awful lot about what not to do. And sometimes that was more defining than the ones who taught me what to do. Mm-hmm.
Any stories that you'd want to share, names aside, companies aside, of some of those what not to do's along? Hey, while we got it up, we're not going to get any bad luck for the cheers. So we'll just take a moment for ProMark here, take a moment for PHRA on your cup over there. Again, great partnership in both of those guys. There we go. There it is, right? Making Liz and the group happy.
Yeah, Liz made sure that I got one of these because when my hands stopped working, and I need a handle on everything now.
We got it. Okay. So some of the what not to do's, Vin, 1 or 2 of them, maybe.
Well, yeah. Well, this is a longer story, so sorry, but it's funny. So we had a guy who was in charge. This is when I was at the coke plant. I won't mention his name. I think he's still alive, although he probably should be dead by now. But sometimes evil lives longer than good. So, but the guy was trying to get a point across. And he brought the supervisors into a room, big giant room, big giant picture window that looked out over the plant, right in the front where people were working, by the way. Yep. So decided that the folks there, our crews weren't cleaning doors as they should. In a coke oven, the doors keep the smoke from being escaping. And if they're not cleaned properly, smoke will come out, and that we violate at that time, Allegheny County Health Rules. Anyhow, so he decided we weren't cleaning well enough.
Mm-hmm.
So he got, I don't know if you remember these, I haven't seen one in years, but they were galvanized steel, big giant galvanized steel garbage cans.
Okay,
55 gallons, thick, heavy, thick.
Oscar the Grouch used to live in one. I'm pretty sure.
There you go. That's the one. He dumped all the garbage out, put it in front of all of us, and took a mattock, and he started beating the crap out of this garbage can to show us, just like to be dramatic and show us how we were supposed to teach our people to use this mattock. And when he was finished, he took this beat up garbage can and threw it through the picture window in the office there. Glass was everywhere. 6 people ended up in the dispensary, and that was his way of getting his message across. So,
so you're saying that that's not how you operate as the COO of ProMark?
No.
Okay, got it. All right.
It didn't
windows
work
are safe,
then.
trash cans are safe. Got it.
Yeah, it didn't work back then. It certainly isn't going to work now, but it was good. This guy believed, and again, I jokingly tell people, back in those days, most people were practicing MBO, management by objectives.
Mm-hmm.
We practiced MBI, management by intimidation. That's that's how it was supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? So again, being a young guy, 6 feet tall, 260 pounds back in those days, mostly muscle. That was before gravity took this and put it down here, so, but yeah, so that's what we did. I mean, that's how we were to control our people. And I just looked at that back then and said, no, that's not going to work and not going to work now. And I treated our people differently. I spoke to them like they were human beings. I worked with them and helped them. And my crews were always the best at what we did.
Yep.
So
Vince, one of the things that we talk through here as well is the transition, right? So you talked about the first job, right? Spanning from the internship. I think that's perfectly fine. At some point you said, hey, I'm going to leave company A and go to company B. Mm-hmm. Leave company 1, leave position 1, and take your talents elsewhere and begin a new chapter. Sometimes we're pushed, and we're looking for something else. Sometimes we're pulled, and sometimes it just happens. So, advice and kind of what was going through your mind as you're making that. Maybe you got a trash can thrown at you, and that said, "Hey, okay, got it. Heard loud and clear. Felt loud and clear."
Well, I think all 3 of those things happened to me.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So first thing was the company was closing the plant,
right?
And they were moving somewhere between 5 and 10 people out of 5,000 people to Cleveland. I was one of them. I would have had a job in Cleveland. Yeah. I would have had a job in Cleveland, but I was born and raised in Pittsburgh. And the last place I ever wanted to be was in Cleveland. Right. Sorry for your Cleveland people, but I didn't want to be there. And I was being drawn into something. I had, a guy I knew from church, who was trying to grow his company, and he realized that he was terrible at people, and he figured the only way he was going to grow his company was to have someone who was good with people. Yeah, and so he talked to me about that. So, and then it kind of just happened. So it was one of those things. He was thinking about it. I was thinking about something. And then one day, we started to talk, and he goes, we need to talk about this. And we spent 2 months back and forth, probably every week, every other week for 2 months, talking about, what he needed and talking about what I could provide. And then I left the company, went to work for him. We grew that company 5 times its size in a couple of years. So that was.
And what industry was that, Vince?
Telecommunications.
Okay. And what did you learn? And did you find any other board members in those 5 years of growth over there? 5 years, 5X. You got to have another. Maybe there's 5 people that you can think of.
Yeah, there were several people, but one in particular, the CEO of the company. He was terrible with people. No lie. I mean, when I first got there, he was complaining because he didn't want to discuss. I was trying to put together a policy manual, which they didn't have back at all. And he said, well, we don't need bereavement leave in there. I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, why would someone need to be off to go to a funeral? Their loved one's already dead. So yeah, that's what I was dealing with. But what he did teach me was this, because I always had an operations background, and now I'm in HR, which is different. the main thing he taught me was, he said, Vince, if you're talking to me or any other COO, CEO, anybody like that, and you want a project done where they're going to have to spend money, you need to understand numbers. If you can't present a case, you can walk into my office. You can walk into my office, he said, and you can tell me we need this because it's going to help the people. I don't care. He goes, I'm here to make money. That's my job. So he said, so if you can talk to me with a proposal that has numbers where I'm going to, the investment that I make is going to come back to me somehow or another, I'm listening. Mm-hmm. Best advice I ever got my entire HR career, people career. I always used business analytics numbers to get my projects through. And I had probably less problems than most HR people because I understood that, because I wasn't talking to another HR person. I was talking to a finance guy, money guy.
Yep. So then after your 5 years, you guys were extremely successful. You were saying to yourself, man, I kind of like this HR thing. I'm getting to be kind of good at it. And there's, a couple of steps along the way. So just give us the quick summary between the telecommunications and the ProMark days.
Well, there was, one job. So we hired several thousand people at this company. Mm-hmm. And anybody in management, that wasn't a telecommunications technician and up, I was involved in the hire.
Yep.
They decided to hire just one person, and didn't include me in the hire. It was on purpose because this, wanted to do something special. The CEO was looking for a succession plan, wanted somebody to, his exit plan, wanted to bring somebody in that would take over the company when he retired.
Okay.
Problem was, remember I told you years ago, before that he hired me 6 years before that because he was terrible with people.
Right.
Well, that remained. He was still terrible. This was a terrible, terrible human being. He was no good. He was ruining the company. He was not following the process. And this guy couldn't see it because he just wanted to have a good exit strategy.
Yeah.
And couldn't see it. And so finally, in front of a whole lot of people in the executive leadership team, I called him some bad names and walked out. And a couple of weeks later, I was in another position, which was even better than that one. But it was funny. A year later, the CEO asked me to lunch. We went to lunch. He apologized to me.
Wow.
And told me, you were 100% right. This guy was worthless. And, but it was too late to, so I
you
were
already gone.
But yeah, while I was at the other company I worked for was, it was a health related company. We did medical transcription. I grew that company 4 times its size. So, and had a lot of help there too. So always help. I told you, I don't think maybe I told you this before, but not on this. When I was a young man, starting my career, I was what was referred to as a rugged individualist. In other words, I thought I could do everything on my own. Work hard, stay strong, do it all yourself because you couldn't trust anybody. Well, thankfully, I learned sometime not too long into my career that, not only was it better to have collaboration, partners, mentors, things like that, but it was not only better productively for performance, but it was better for life.
Yeah, I mean, you feel good.
Yeah, maybe it was just more fun. I mean, growing those 2 companies were the most fun I think I've ever had. I loved it because we had great teamwork, great cooperation within the company, and by this time now I'm becoming more of a mentor than having one. You know what I mean?
Probably both. Yeah, you're swinging both ways at this point, where it's up, down, side to side. And you say, hey, I'm in sponge mode. I've soaked up a lot of goodness, but now I need to be able to pay it forward, right? And give back. Okay. So Vince, before we get into the ProMark piece, talk to us a little bit about why you got involved with PHRA.
Well,
Other
it was a
than
long time ago.
you wanted to show people up in bocce, but
Well,
hey.
nah, mostly it was Liz. She is wonderful, and I just I think the world of her. And I again, I always understand that you never know everything.
Right.
All right. This was a good place to pick up some things. Not only that, but it's the networking piece. I facilitate that HR roundtable. And the reason for that is the one thing that comes out of that people don't expect to come out of that, they begin to realize that they're not the only one with that problem.
Right.
You're beating your head off a wall because you don't understand what's going on. You think you're the only one on earth that has this problem. And then you come and sit at a round table and find out 16 other people in the group have the same problem as you. Yep. And by the way, 2 of them have figured out what to do. And now you get help that way. And that was one of those collaborative things that I just thought was great. I mean, and the PHRA always has nice events. And it's not the events that are nice. It's not where we go to have, to have a meal or something, but it's the people you talk with. You know what I mean? There's only 2 things. There's only 2 things that determine or that change who you are today and who you will be in the future. And that's the books you read and the people that you talk with.
Yeah.
And so I'm a big people I talk with guy. I lean more to that. But that's what.
Do you have some books that you recommend as you're going through? Of course, you'd say Pathfinders. I thank you very much. To beyond that, I appreciate that, Vince. To beyond that one.
You're a nice man. Well, my number 1 book to read is, the Bible.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That's the perfect guide to leadership, to interpersonal relationships, and mental and emotional health. I start there every day, and I don't usually get much beyond there. There are so many books, and I'm very cautious about this. I used to have a CEO when we did the medical transcription industry. Good guy, very helpful. But this was a guy who loved to read books when he'd go on vacation.
Yeah.
And every time he'd come home from vacation, he was changing the whole organization because of the book he read. I'm like, no,
what you should have been doing, you should have been writing certain books that got into his suitcase so that whatever you wanted the company to be doing is whatever he was reading about. And he comes back, he says, we should do this. You say, and like, you mean in this and this? He's like, yes, exactly. That's what's in the book. So next time around, we'll be able to.
Yes. Well, I'm the one who had to talk him off a ledge most of the time when he'd come back and say, have you ever heard the phrase slot machine manager?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this was him. It'd read a book every 3 months. It'd read a book and put another coin in and pull the handle, and we changed the organization.
Oh boy!
But don't get me wrong, he was good at it. I'm not going to lie. He would do that, and it would drive some people crazy, but we were very successful. Yeah. And that was probably the most fun I ever had at a job. Mm-hmm. We did some crazy things there. It was very entrepreneurial, and that's the most fun that I had.
Okay. Now, at some point, well, go ahead.
No, I was going to. You were asking about steps, and we're still continuing. I had one more step in between there and ProMark.
Keep stepping. Keep on stepping.
So I decided to leave that company mostly because they were bought by another company, and they didn't want me. So they told me in October that we would make the move in December. Sorry, they don't want you. They don't want. They didn't want to have. Most of our leadership team they didn't want. The new company was a lot bigger than our company. So I decided at that point in time I was going to start my own business.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, not okay. I loved doing the work, but I hated doing the sales part of it. That just wasn't my thing. So, and by the way, it was January 1st, 2008. So,
great time.
Yeah.
Great time.
Yeah. So that didn't last really long. But anyway, so then I went to work briefly, about 2 years, I think, for a small organization that was a transportation company, and they were growing, and I helped them grow a little bit. We doubled the size of that company for a little while. And then from there, believe it or not, my church asked me, they were looking for a director of connections. Mm-hmm. So again, me and people, it's always been about people with me. So I became the director of connections. Well, it turns out that they needed other things. And I had some bandwidth. So, 5 years later, I was turning 60 and working 90-hour weeks. And I just said, nah, there's got to be something else. And then that's when, Bill Harmon was starting when he purchased this company. And that's how I got here. I worked with him at the church, and he knew my work ethic, and he knew how I was with people. And so we started this company, and we've been growing it ever since.
Yeah. So tell me, what's ProMark do?
ProMark, well, there's a lot of things we say. It's a human capital management consulting organization, which nobody understands. So then we go to the next level. We do executive coaching and leadership development and strategic people advisory and outplacement, career transition. And most of the people we talk to, they don't do that. They don't understand that either. Basically, we help companies help their people be more productive and performance from the very beginning, from the time they're thinking about hiring somebody, all the way through till they're exiting the organization.
And even on some of the ideas and thoughts around the alumni piece, right? Because you might have folks that boomerang back in. So don't you sell yourself short, but it's that ongoing life cycle process before, during, after, and so on. Vince, are there organizations that are too small or too large for you guys?
No. Our little motto, little tagline is, we stole this from the Got Milk people, so you got people, then likely you have challenges, and ProMark can help. So we don't really care. As long as there's people in the organization, they need help somehow or another from team. CEOs are getting better at building diverse teams, people who have, different skill sets, different training, different education. And then they can't, they wonder why they can't seem to be productive, right? Because they can't get along or they can't communicate. We spend a lot of time with organizations just helping their teams understand each other so that they can be productive, things like that. Folks, they got, we had, this is my favorite one. Part of the education or executive coaching is we do it for development and other things, but we have what we call, and I have to use the air quotes, targeted coaching. Which basically means someone's about to get canned if they don't change a behavior or two. So I don't want to tell you a client name, but this is out west from here. We had a doctor, young female doctor, who would start her day by coming into the organization and screaming at the parking lot attendant. Nice. And that kind of continued through the whole day.
It was a hype up. It was a hype up scream, right? It was definitely not negative, controversial, or anything like that. It was hope you have a great day. Congratulations.
No, it wasn't that
quite,
at all. Huh? And so the organization loved her because she was a great physician and brought lots of money into the organization, was just sharp, very sharp. But they said, look, we're not going to be able to keep her if she keeps this behavior. So we did some targeted coaching with her, and she's doing very well, on track right now. That's just one. We have so many of those success stories. We don't have enough time to talk about them, Pete. Sorry.
Okay. I'm taking a note over here. So as we talk about more of what's going on inside organizations, what's helping people, you and I have talked a fair amount about these concepts. You've seen me speak, present, personal board of advisors, career map. So you've been there, done that. You could write a couple of books. We might not say you got the t-shirt, but we give you the apron because you're doing all the cooking. But Vince, whenever it comes to career map, right, for our employees, personal board of advisors, right, multiple mentors for our employees, where do you see the value of this concept for organizations, right? Companies of varying levels. How is this kind of stuff going to help them whenever they arm their people with these ideas?
Well, a personal board of advisors, first of all, is just smart. I don't really need a company to tell me that. And, although it would be a good thing, because again, if you don't have that knowledge, you don't know. But everybody has somebody who's influenced their life. And usually you only hear about it when it's bad. Like, oh, that person did this horrible thing to me and that ruined my whole, there's good ones and bad ones, but that's important. But this career map thing you're talking about, with today's, we talk a lot about multiple generations in the workplace and things like that. People my age are not looking at a career map right now. My career map basically says stay alive, long enough to finish what I'm trying to do here. But the folks that are coming into the workplace now, from the millennials on down, we're coaching our clients to do career maps, to have some before they're even hired.
Yep.
Folks are not coming on board unless they can see where they're going.
Yep.
And by the way, it's very clear to us they don't know naturally. It's not a natural thing. They may have, what word did you use? Aspirations.
Yeah.
They may have aspirations, but they have no clue how to get from here to there. So helping them prepare a map can guide somebody, then it's not just chance, a lot of folks in my generation, it was, whatever came up, we just took advantage of it and went. But it'd be nice to have a map. Now, don't get me wrong. There's going to be deviations to your career map because things change, and you think, and by the way, they're not always bad. You know what I mean? If, you believe like I do that, God's in control of this, well, things are going to change and they may be for the good, but you can't see it today, but yeah, we're helping our clients work on career mapping stuff before they have, what we used to call career pathing. I imagine it's similar, but yours sounds more defined, which I like better, pre-employment, okay, why would you want to work here? Well, if you come here, here's what we can offer you, and here's how we're going to help you, and here's what you need to do to get to this, to this place here. So,
and one of the fun things, right? Some of the people that use Latitude are able to actually show, hey, don't just take my word for it whenever it comes to that career map piece. Mm-hmm. Let me show you career maps of others. And let's look at the paths. You're coming into a level 2 engineer position, for example. Look at this person. He's now the CTO, was a level 2 engineer. Yeah. Look at this person, senior manager of engineering, was a level 2 engineer. Look at this person. They're a level 7 engineer. They were a level 2 engineer. So you can go a couple of different directions. And that's whenever it really brings it together, solidifies it, makes it more realistic. Vince, I'm going to get ready to do a quick summary here. Any closing point that you'd want to share with the group and the audience?
Well, I will tell you, I think I mentioned this already. If you happen to believe that you're the only one that can do something, or that your entire career is dependent solely on your abilities and skills and knowledge, then I'm going to recommend you find somebody else, because, there's so many things, and you need a mentor or 2 or 3 or 5. Mm-hmm. You need peers, people that aren't exactly a mentor, but they're with you in the battle. And then you need people to mentor, because you have learned some things, and you need all 3 of those at the same time. And you need role models, you need advisors, friends, family. There's a lot of folks you can go to do this, but the rugged individualist philosophy and, just isn't going to get you too far, So back in my day, you don't remember, back in my day, there was always the man on the street interviews, back when they had microphones, they'd stick a microphone in your face.
Hey, those are coming back, by the way.
Is it coming back?
Oh, yeah.
So they would talk to some business mogul, some guy who made lots of money and did something. And, Mr. Millionaire, what's the secret to your success? And they'd stick the microphone in it. And he goes, and they always say, I surround myself with good people.
Right.
That theory and philosophy has not changed over the years. The ones that surround themselves with good people are the ones that are successful, whether that's personally, privately, or corporately, however you want to do it. You surround yourself with good people, it's going to have a positive impact on you and everything you do.
Amen to that. Well, Vince, I'm going to do a quick recap here. So the boss of bocce and bourbon, Vince Consoli, he truly is and has been a 1 in 1,000. We heard that from some of his stories. He's a yes man with a can-do attitude. Italian roots, hailing from Pittsburgh, and they tried to pull him away, but he said, that's not for me. Wanted to be a teacher. You shared how this was influenced and really dove in and said, hey, mom passed it when I was 9, and that was a big piece of my, what ended up being a 42-year career. A lot influenced by your biology teacher. And the question, to college or not to college? But you said yes. Business focus with an emphasis on education with real world applications. You took your talents to LTV Steel, operations, leadership, and management. Somehow you convinced everybody else in your hiring class to leave, but you stayed there. And about a year and a half in, leading more than 150 people, mostly with kids older than you. No career map in those days. The mantra was heads down and ears and eyes open and see what can go and happen from here. You made a great point about the learning from phonies on the board and what not to do. The adage of trash cans and windows and Maddox. Oh my. I can't believe it, but hey, it did occur, and you learned more of what good does not look like. Management by intimidation, MBI, was the way of the world, and you said no. That's not the way that people should be treated. And you took the way it ought to be done to telecommunications. And the proof is in the pudding. 5 years, you did a 5X. People skills, operations, insights, learn the numbers, show the ROI. You found out that business analytics and that advice stuck with you. Show me the money, show me the numbers, and it'll come together. And he did it again, 4Xing a medical transcription company. Vince, you had this rugged individualist mentality, and you realize that true growth comes from being better together. It's more fun when we do it with others. We have to give a shout out to PHRA, which was so valuable as you meet people. And Liz is pretty fantastic too. I love the piece that you shared of 2 things that change the you of today to the you of tomorrow is the books you read and the people you interact with. Stay away from those slot machine management practices. You explored entrepreneurship, then you took time and transportation, and the biblical base took you back to the church where those relationships turned into some absolutely fantastic things. Shout out to Bill Harmon and the ProMark group, helping companies help their people. The PBA is for good, it's proactive, it's smart, and career maps are a necessity for visualizing those potential paths. Vince, you iterated many times that life's too short to do it alone. So thanks for giving some guidance to us on how we can do it together. And we all know that ProMark's there in case we need a little bit more help.
Absolutely.